gaming on the go. Or should I say, retro gaming on the go. But like, on your phone? There's something about the convenience of carrying your retro gaming collection at all times, and one of the easiest ways to do so is to emulate on your phone, at least if you're using Android. My main issue with doing that is, well, have you ever played Super Metroid with a touchscreen? Honestly, emulation on Android has gotten super good in the recent years, so it's only natural that people wonder, why not just use your phone whenever I talk about one of these retro devices that I own? And there are a few reasons why emulating on a phone is not my preferred way of doing things. It is true that it has its merits, and I still like playing around with it every now and then, but it's just not for me. With that being said, if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. I love your face. If you're new here, welcome, sit back, relax, and have a good time. My name is Nos, and today, we're talking about Android controllers. Now, since I'm not a fan of the added delay that comes with Bluetooth controllers, it leaves us with USB-C models. And because of their form factor, there are only two commonly recommended models that I want to talk about today. The Razer Kishi and the GameSir X2. I really like these two in particular, and today, I wanted to take some time to kind of compare them and potentially help people make a decision when it comes to buying one or the other. Both of these controllers require you to kind of nest your phone into them, so as a quick note before I begin, I want to mention that the Razer Kishi has this kind of recess where your phone is expected to fit. So if you have a bigger phone or expect to keep your case on, I'd say this one will definitely not be for you. It tends to be a tight fit on my end, and both phones I've used for testing have no case, and they're not big phones either. These days, I use an iPhone as my daily driver, so I decided to repurpose an old Huawei P20 Pro and an old Pixel XL2 as emulation devices, since I had them lying around anyway. And you'll see them attached to the controllers throughout this video. I'm gonna start with the Razer Kishi here, since it's the first controller I bought. I think I got this on sale at Best Buy at some point, way before I started looking into retro devices. Because of this, I've used this controller quite a bit. The first thing I believe is worth a mention is that my monkey brain constantly struggles with the clip at the back of the controller when I want to put my phone in, but that could really just be a me thing and my 5 remaining brain cells. Once the controller is plugged into your phone, I'd say it's fairly comfortable. I do think it's a little too wide, and once you put it on, it makes your phone into quite a monster. For example, here it is next to a Nintendo Switch. But if we ignore that, the joysticks feel really good. Probably the best I've felt on a controller like this. The face buttons are also fairly good quality. They feel like a PS4 button, but a little softer, and hopefully that's enough for you to get a picture of how they feel. The shoulder buttons are okay at best, but at least we have analog triggers, even though they feel kinda cheap. My biggest issue with the Kishi is its D-pad. It's just not good, and for anything that requires more specific inputs, it's just unplayable for me. For example, I just cannot perform any wall jumps while using this controller in Super Metroid. It keeps registering extra inputs, and it's just not good. Finally, at the bottom of the controller, you'll find a USB-C pass-through, so you'll be able to charge your phone while playing. I don't have any USB-C headphones to test, so I cannot confirm if audio passes through fine, but I would assume that it does. Oh, I almost forgot. The two buttons you'd probably use as start and select are placed a little weird, but that's whatever. You get used to it. So yeah, overall, it's a pretty good telescopic Switch-like controller, and Razer did a pretty good job balancing price and quality here. Look, they even included speaker holes for better sound here. But how does it stack up against the GameSir X2? Okay, immediately the build quality on the GameSir is way worse. The thing really feels like cheap plastic, and honestly, at the price it sells for, I expected much better from this thing. I do like the fact that it comes as one solid unit quite a bit, however. It makes the whole thing feel solid, as if it's one big unit once you slide your phone in, unlike the Kishi, which can be quite wobbly because of its elastic back. Just like the Kishi, you'll find a USB-C pass-through at the bottom of the controller for charging. If you look at the back of it, you'll also see that it has some kind of rubberized grips, but honestly, it just feels like borderline plastic. The D-pad on this thing is also not great. It's super clicky and doesn't pivot enough, but it still leagues better than the Kishi's D-pad, and I'd use it any day over this other one. The joysticks are okay. I wish they had more resistance. I don't know how to describe it, but they're just way too light. It's like you're pushing nothing. I really don't know how to explain this feeling, but it's like it's super loose. But no, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with the face buttons. They're clicky instead of mushy. I'd say it's comparable to a Joy-Con in terms of feel here. Not my favorite, but also not a deal breaker. Now, the shoulder buttons are gonna be a make it or break it for a lot of people. First of all, the triggers are not analog. They only click on this one. And honestly, while I do not hate them, they are so loud. Listen to this. And finally, you have your Start, Select, App, and Home button, and they all feel exactly like the face buttons, nothing to say about them really. Where it gets difficult for me when it comes to these two controllers is the size of the whole thing. The GameSir is just so much nicer when it comes to size, and I just don't know how I feel about it. I think when it comes to long-term comfort, the Kishi has the edge because of its size, but for general fit, I have to give it to the GameSir here. Maybe it's just my tiny hands or maybe just my preferences, but regardless of how cheap it can feel, my go-to controller right now has to be the GameSir X2. But seriously, if you plan to play games that use the joysticks, or if you don't mind dealing with a sometimes dodgy D-pad, you really can't go wrong with the Kishi. The build quality is great, and as far as I remember, it's not ridiculously expensive. However, if you're like me and plan to play 16-bit era games mostly, the X2 is probably a better pick. All in all, neither of these controllers is a bad pick, and ultimately it all comes down to what you'd rather play and what you're willing to sacrifice. Alright, thank you for joining me today, and hopefully you've enjoyed this video. I'm planning to cover more and more of these little gadgets, so if you'd like to see more, please feel free to let me know. And on that note, this is Nos Syndrome signing off, and I will see you next time. I love your face.